Let's get ready to rumble!
Hello and welcome to Netflix vs. Cinema, the podcast that after speaking about Mads Mikkelsen last week and thinking that, maybe in the upcoming films, that upcoming Harry Potter movies, he might actually, reduce his quality rate. And then seeing the trailer for that is going, oh, Mads might do it. Mads, he might do it. Anyway, my name is Tosin. I am the host, and the resident Mads Mikkelsen expert is Sharon.
Hello.
Joining me from the Isle of Wight today. So Sharon, I'm not sure if you have seen the trailer for the Secrets of Dumbledore, the new Fantastic Beasts movie, with that has all of 3 seconds of Mads Mikkelsen. Yeah, it has all of 3 seconds of Mads Mikkelsen in it, and already you're looking at him going, "Yeah, this could work." But
I might check that out then.
Yeah, Mads Mikkelsen
for research purposes, of course.
Oh yeah, total research purposes. It's like Mads Mikkelsen bringing some of that Hannibal energy. This actually could work. So what we do on this show, you might have looked at the title and said, "What on earth does that mean? Netflix versus cinema?" Or how do you actually go about that whole thing? How do we pit them against each other? We go to the cinema and we watch a couple of things. We go by home and we watch a couple of things at home. We rate everything out of 5, and then at the end of the day, we see who has gotten more stars. Has it been Netflix or has it been cinema? Who has given us more bang for our buck? So, Sharon, I've done this for the last couple of weeks, where I've essentially taken the big film, even once when I took it right off your plate, when I took House of Gucci off your plate and said, "Mine, I'll have that." But unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to do it again. I think that there is a film that is definitely the big film that is out in cinemas right now, that has just been released, that everybody is talking about, and that we need to talk about. So, and that's a film that I went to see. I went to see it last night at 10 o'clock last night, and that is Spiderman No Way Home, the 20-something film in the MCU. But the third Tom Holland starring Spider-Man solo movie. I went to see that, and at home I'm going to talk about a documentary series called Bad Sport. How about you? What have you seen in both Netflix and cinema?
At the cinema, I went to see Steven Spielberg's latest film, A West Side Story.
Yes.
I don't know how you would call it, because would you say it was a reimagining? Because it's not that different to the original film. It's just had some more sensitive casting.
I'll just call it an adaptation. It's an adaptation of the stage show.
A stage musical. So yeah, the latest version of the stage musical on screen, West Side Story. And then on Amazon, I saw a Guy Ritchie film starring Jason Statham called Wrath of Man.
Yeah, that a musical in its own right. So it's like the Jason Statham film is a musical in its own right. Instead of musical numbers, we have punch ups and shoot ups.
There's a certain sort of balletic quality to some of the action films. I
have to admit, I do think that. With like, joking aside, I think that there is actually a bit of a poetry to a good action movie, and Jason Statham is one of the best proponents of that today. I actually think Jason Statham is one of the best proponents of, we're going to have an action movie, it's going to be lean, it's going to be hard muscles, and people are going to punch each other without saying much. They're going to talk with their fists. I think he's one of the best proponents of that today. So, shall we kick off with Spider-Man Far From Home? No Way Home. Because this is
Far From No Way Home. No, that was quite right.
Far From Nowhere Homecoming. Because that's what they've done. I mean, I like the fact, because obviously the fact that you had, or when Spider-Man was made into a film with, the Sam Raimi movies all the way back in the early 2000s, that you had like Spider-Man 1, 2, 3, and then you had the Amazing Spider-Man 1, 2, and I love the fact that Marvel just went, no, we're just gonna, I think the first one, when they call it Homecoming, because there is this whole extra theme between who owns Spider-Man, or is it Marvel or is it Sony, because they sold the rights to Sony ages ago when Marvel was in trouble, before Marvel Studios really took off with Iron Man, and before Marvel became the Marvel that we know today. And so there was this whole thing where they didn't have ownership of Spider-Man, and that's why we have but I love the fact that when they came in, it was called Homecoming, and there were so many different layers to the title Homecoming that it's like it's Spider-Man coming home to Marvel. It's all that kind of stuff. It was based around a homecoming dance, and and I love what they've done with them. I've loved what they've done with them. But let me start talking about Spider-Man No Way Home. I also love the really weird thing that they all have home in the title somehow. Yeah. They actually did a lot of jokes with that, where obviously the three leads of the film are Tom Holland, Zendaya, and Jacob Batalon. And they had a bit where for 3 days in a row, each one of them on the Instagram account tweeted that new exclusive, we're going to let you know what the new name of the new Spider-Man movie is. And one of them was like, it's Spider-Man Home Slice. and they just sort of joked that they had this whole, I remember there was a show that they had where they had this whole board that had all the brainstorm ideas of what they were going to call the new Spider-Man movie. Was like, Spider-Man, there's no place like home. Spider-Man. But this one, it's No Way Home. They settled on No Way Home. And this film, I saw it last night, and there's very many times when it put a smile on my face. It is a very good film, and I will try and be succinct. I will try and encapsulate this thing, but I may just go all over the place. Please try and stick with me, and I will try and do all this without giving you any spoilers, because this is a film that inspired me to come out of the cinema. And the first thing I put on Twitter and on Facebook was, go see this film before some mean, uncaring person on the internet spoils it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it happens too many times.
I mean, apparently I read in a message, in a story today, that Sony are actually going through the internet trying to stamp out Spider-Man spoilers, because there is so much that happens in this film. I mean, beforehand, the director, John Watts, he referred to it as Spider-Man Endgame. So, like, jokingly referred to it as Spider-Man Endgame. And I can kind of see where he was getting at, because you know how there's so many moments that happen in Endgame, and there's things that happen in Endgame that are like, is that fan service? Is it great storytelling? I don't know, I just love it. And there's loads of things like that in this film that happen that you're like, ooh, is it great storytelling or not? If you've seen the trailer, it should come as no surprise to you. And talking about this film, you kind of have to spoil the ending of the previous Spider-Man movie. So if you haven't seen Spider-Man Far From Home, the premise of this movie is a spoiler about that film. Right. But by the end of that film, essentially, it is revealed that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And this film kicks off with everybody knowing Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and people having differing reactions to that. So there's people who think Peter Parker is Spider-Man and he's a menace and he killed Mysterio, and Mysterio was actually, like, you know, the real hero and Spider-Man's the bad guy. And there's people who are kind of like, oh no, Spider-Man, oh Peter Parker, you're great, you're amazing. And his school is like, oh my god, Spider-Man comes to our school. And they make a whole advertising campaign about how Spider-Man goes to the school, and they have like a Spider-Man shrine in the school done by the principals. And there's this whole thing, the fact that you know how it is that nowadays when there's truth and there's alternative facts in inverted commas, and they have this whole play on the truth of what actually happened, and how no matter how much he tries to tell people what actually happened, it doesn't really matter, because people have their own alternative facts and they want to believe what they want to believe. And so and the idea is that Spider-Man goes to Doctor Strange and he says, look, ever since people found out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, my life has been hell. All the people I love, their life has been hell because they're associated with me. Is there some sort of spell that you can come up with? You're a magician. You're a sorcerer. Is there some sort of spell you can come up with that will make people forget that I am Spider-Man? And Doctor Strange, in his reckless way, is like, yeah, sure, we could totally do that. And so Doctor Strange starts coming up with this spell to make the world forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And when he starts, he doesn't explain it to Peter Parker to begin with, and he just starts doing the spell, and he says, right, that's it, everybody's going to forget you're Spider-Man. It's like, wait, including my aunt? No, but I want her to know. I want her to know that I'm Spider-Man. And he keeps interrupting the spell to go, oh, what about my friend? Oh, what about my girlfriend? What about... And in the end, the spell becomes so unwieldy that Dr. Strange just has to shut it down and close it off and go, nope, sorry, we're not doing it. And But the way it's done, I think one of the things I really like about this version of Spider-Man, Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man, is that he is a kid. They never shy away from the fact that he is a kid. So he's precocious as a kid is, he's annoying like a kid is, and he makes mistake like a kid does that have consequences that he doesn't see coming, that he's been warned about, but he still does it because he's just, in his way, he's just trying to do the right thing. And I think that's what, and so when he interrupts this is where we have the multiverse. The whole multiverse thing, and anybody who's listened to the show, and Sharon, you've been listening to me, and you know how averse I am to the multiverse, and how I think it is the beginning of the end, and how I think it's the beginning of bad storytelling. And there are elements of this where I think, okay, this is where it's beginning to eat itself. There are elements of it where I still think that, but my God, Marvel know how to tell a story. They know how to make it actually work and how to actually put it into the story so that it makes sense why that would happen. It makes sense why this, even when Peter Parker makes a big decision in this film, which at the core of it goes to the core of who Spider-Man is, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man is trying to help. And you can see him as like a puppy dog who is just really, really trying to help and is wetting the bed. And even when he's making that decision, and you can see that there's going to be bad consequences that are going to come from this decision, you can still believe that he would do it. And they still manage to find a way to make it believable. So, I mean, in this film, you already know that Alfred Molina, if you've seen the trailer, Alfred Molina's in this film. Alfred Molina previously was in the second Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie as Dr. Octopus. You know he's in this film. You know Willem Dafoe's in this film. And so there is this sort of like break it. So this is a bit where Marvel have almost stopped making films. They started telling stories that are about themselves. So this film is almost a meta commentary on the fight for who owns Spider-Man between Sony and Marvel. There's a reading of this film in which this film is more about that than it is about anything that's actually happening within the MCU. But it's so elegantly handled. The first hour... Sorry?
There's a scene in the trailer, isn't it, where... Is it Doc Octo, whatever his name is?
Dr. Octopus. Yeah.
Says, "You're not a Spider-Man," because obviously... He's not his Spider-Man.
He's like,
so
you're not.
Quite cleverly done.
He looks like him. He's like, you're not Peter Parker.
It's really cleverly done.
Yeah, and I think that it's very cleverly done. It's very elegantly done. The first hour of this film zooms by, and I'm just kind of like, oh my God, because the last time we had a Spider-Man multiverse thing was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which is just genius. And I was really worried that you wouldn't be able to match that because this is live action. This is live action, and you really can't match what you can do in animation and live action. But the first hour of this film zooms by, and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is great. This is, And it slows down a bit. It sags a little bit in the middle before it picks up again towards the end. And it manages to say a whole bunch of philosophical things about what it means to be Spider-Man. And you might remember years ago me talking about how when I was growing up in Nigeria, we loved Spider-Man because he was a sufferhead. He was like we could relate to him because his life never seemed to go well. and there's elements of that in this, and the characters that they bring in from the other Spider-Man movies that have already pre-existed, and the way they explain how they are there and what happens. I think is just really, really well done. And the cameos, there's one cameo that is not one of the ones you will expect. He's not in any of the trailers, and he shows up in the film. And when he showed up in the film, I punched the air. I was like, oh my God, yes, yay!
You had your Rocher moment.
No, honestly, essentially, I was like, oh shit, oh my God, what are these guys doing? Oh, what does this mean? What does this mean? It was, so yeah, I'm a Marvel fan. I still don't like the multiverse. I can see elements of this where it's beginning to eat itself because now we're getting stories that are kind of almost about the movie making industry, not so much about. They're about both. They're about the movie making industry and they're about the characters themselves. But with this and the new Doctor Strange movie, we're having a story where essentially the hero creates their own problem that needs to be solved. It's almost like the hero creates their own villain and then has to go and solve it, as opposed to this villain this origin story for the villain and everything.
A villain.
Yeah. I really liked this. There were so many times I had a massive grin on my face, and if I had to give it a star rating, I think I would have to give it have to give it a 4 because I do think it sags a bit in the middle.
Yeah.
I do think it sags a bit in the middle. I know that there's people who give it a 5, and I totally understand that. I do not argue with that, but there's bits where I think it sags a bit in the middle. I think there's some scenes where, because with Marvel movies, sometimes the scenes where characters are just talking are almost as much fun as the scenes where they're punching everything up and destroying huge swathes of real estate. And there are some of the scenes where they're talking that don't quite work, but there's some of them that just totally sink, where you're like, I love this. More of these characters in a room talking, please. This is amazing. So this is, I think, ever since Endgame, this is the first Marvel movie that I've gone, right, I see where they're going with this. They've got it. And in typical, how there's many different layers to the whole homecoming and everything like that, there's many different layers to the idea of No Way Home. So what I thought No Way Home was going to mean before I watched this film, totally different to what I thought. When I watched it, I was like, oh, that's what they mean by No Way Home. That's what they mean by No Way Home. So yeah, it's really good. Love it. Love what they're doing. Love how they're bringing everybody together. Love what Kevin Feige is. And I just love the fact that they've built this world that makes sense. And I will keep talking for the entire hour if I didn't stop and just say, yeah, okay, one more thing.
4 stars. That sounds good, though. That sounds good.
Yeah. Okay, one more thing. So I've been watching the Hawkeye show on Disney Plus. And in Hawkeye, I think, Sharon, you would love this, because there's a bit in Disney Plus in the Hawkeye show where Hawkeye goes to New York and he goes to Broadway to watch Rogers, the musical, which is a musical about Captain America. And it's little things like the fact, like there's a bit where Spider-Man is swinging through New York, and obviously New York, that's where Broadway is, and you can actually see in the background there's a Rogers the musical billboard. And I'm just kind of like, it's those kind of touches that make me think, yes.
They've joined up those dots.
Yeah. I'm like, yes, I love this thing. It's like the comics come to life. And I will shut up now and let us go on to something else. So we are going to go over to what Sharon saw on Netflix and talk about Netflix and Friends. First of all, any questions about Spider-Man No Way Home?
No, I take it because you didn't appreciate it, you need to have seen the previous Spider-Man films.
Yes.
Do you need to be conversant with the whole of the MCU universe? Because I think that was the redundant universe. But do you have to be familiar with the canon to really appreciate it?
There's a couple of things you need to know. You need to know what happened in Endgame. And you need to know what happened in Endgame and what has led to this world. You need to there's bits where they do little bits of recap, but I think you need to know what's happened in the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, and you need to be aware that there have been previous Spider-Man movies. I think that's about it. You need to be aware that there have been previous Spider-Man movies. Yeah. I think if you weren't aware of that, you would watch the film, and by watching the film, you would become aware of the fact that they are previous Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, there's other things out there.
Yeah, so I think that's about it. But I'll say go watch it. And I think for anybody who was a Spider-Man fan growing up,
they have to. It's essential, yeah. Because some of these the films where the canon has become so big now, I worry if I've missed an installment that I've lost something vital. And I think, can I watch this because I haven't actually caught up with all of the television series? Like, I haven't seen Loki yet, and I've not watched Hawkeye yet, and I haven't seen is it Shang-Chi? So I'm thinking, I feel like I'm lagging behind, and I've got a lot of catching up to do before I can get back in the saddle with the MCU. So part of me thinks, no worries that there's such a wealth of sort of film and television now to sort of plough through, that I worry that if I miss a bit of it, that it's going to sort of take something away from my enjoyment of the whole.
Yeah, I just get around that by not missing anything. But I see what you mean. I'm just kind of like, I'm like, yeah, I actually worry about reviewing Marvel stuff now, because I feel like essentially with them, I'm like, okay, they've gone to the stage that whatever they make, they will have my money. Because they will have my money, because I hope that I can still be objective and say things like it lags a little bit in the middle, but I'm just kind of like, these guys know what they're doing.
They can deliver.
And I know that Sony are always trying to threaten to take Spider-Man away from Marvel, but for Sony's good, if Sony want to make money off Spider-Man, they should just leave him where he is with Marvel.
Yeah,
because
but if people see this, they may think, actually, I might go check out those early Tobey Maguires, because there's going to be a generation who've never seen them. Because we tend to forget, because we can look back on our, we're over 21, both of us, and we remember seeing these things. But then there's a generation of people who are 20 now who would have seen Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man.
Yeah, but also I just don't think Sony can do as good a job with Spider-Man as Marvel do. Marvel know exactly what the hell they are doing.
They know what they've got, yeah. Even the fact that when he started off, he had like the hoodie and he had like the mask.
Yeah.
It was a homemade outfit, and it looked like a homemade outfit. Whereas in the past, they've suddenly produced these sort of leotards.
Yes.
And knocked up in their sort of bedroom, and you think, yeah.
Yes.
I don't know how many teenage boys you know, but I don't think their sewing skills are up to that.
Yes. All right, cool. And before I give any spoilers, I'm going to shut up and move on. And we're going to talk about Sharon and what you have seen at home. And so you mentioned Wrath of Man. This is Guy Ritchie directed, Jason Statham starring, bam, 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 kiss, kiss, bang, bang. So tell us, what is this all about?
This is about a man played by Jason Statham who gets a job at a security firm about 2 months after the security firm have been involved in a hold-up where their main job is to transport cash from the shops and retailers, and they basically transport it in bulk from these retailers. They hold it in their storage wagons. They're like a Securicor if you're British. Yep. And then they then take it to the banks. But they're like this. They're the sort of the escorts for this huge sums of money. Yep. And one of the vans was held up, and 2 of the security guards and a member of the public were killed in this raid. And so Jason Statham's character has come in to work for this firm when they're like basically still reeling in shock from this big hold up.
Yeah. And
so everyone who gets employed with them has to go through certain sort of skill tests. They have to be sort of able to handle themselves with weapons. They need to be able to handle themselves in a crisis. They sort of have all these different skill tests, and you have to score a minimum of like 70% in order to be employed. And if you have a background in security or background in any sort of police, then you have a bit of an advantage. And so Jason Statham's character is a man who has had a previous experience in security, so he gets a job with there saying, like, I know what the risks are. And then on a drive one day when he's on a job, they get held up.
Yep.
And instead of sort of responding as a sort of a civilian would, he basically turns into a different mode, and he basically is able to wipe out the entire gang of people who hold up their truck. And then suddenly, from being like a bit of an ordinary guy who sort of like just fits in with the rest, he suddenly has a man with extraordinary skills. And not expected. His sort of ability to shoot, he's able to handle himself in a crisis, is not panicking when the bullets are flying, sets him a little bit apart. And then as the story unfolds, we begin to understand that there's more to Jason Statham's character than meets the eye, and that he has got a background, he's got a history, and then he has got a reason for being where he is.
Yep.
And as the story unfolds, all the different strands that you think are disconnected become maybe not so disconnected after all. And as Guy Ritchie likes to do, all these things come together in a bit of an explosive event at the end.
You see that Guy Ritchie, when you mentioned that, I still remember the scene in Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels that sets to the music of Zorba the Greek, that just has like all these different people converging, and I still think that's one of my favorite sort of like things of that moment. So with this, I've seen the trailer for this, and I thought this looks like it could be fun.
It is a fun film, yeah. And so unlike his other Guy Ritchie other films, it's set in America, though Jason Statham keeps his own accent, so he has got a sort of English British accent in it, so he just sound like the
because Yeah, because he's tried doing the American before and it did not work.
And it always sounds a bit like the States doing an American accent. And so
trying to do one, yeah.
And there's a little bit where he tries to do the old banter. In a lot of his films, there's a little bit of the "oh, blimey, governor," banter going on, and it doesn't quite work when you've got an American characters doing it. That sort of repartee didn't quite work.
Yeah.
Because they're not London geezers; they're people who they've got there. So that is there's like a type of the London geezer, and I think we've probably met them. I've certainly met them in my life, and so there is a type, and I think someone who's American just is not that type. I mean, they may have the equivalent, but it did for me that whole trying to get that geezer bit in there didn't quite work for me.
Well, it kind of grates.
Yeah, because I suddenly thought, this does not sound like your natural speech patterns. These sound like the sort of exchanges that have been introduced for the sake of a bit of humour, a little bit of banter.
Yeah.
Whereas, obviously, good storytelling, it's the words that come out of the actor's mouth are supposed to feel spontaneous, like this is how they would talk. Because but when it feels slightly affected, you think, no, I don't think you would say that in that circumstance, in that way. That does not fit in with your cultural milieu. It just doesn't work. Yeah. So every now and then suddenly I'll be like going, no, that's a Guy Ritchie-ism you've thrown in there to make it more recognisably a Guy Ritchie film, but it's not true for those characters.
Okay.
But beside that, it's a bit of a romp. I mean, you know what you're getting with a Jason Statham film. He is going to beat someone mercilessly, and he's probably going to shoot people really casually. And he's going to display his particular set of skills in a Stath sort of way.
and
the odd one-liner.
Yeah, and probably have a scene with his shirt off.
Did he have a scene? I can't remember that.
Yeah, because I think you get to see Stath with his shirt off, but it isn't as notable as, let's say, when Chris Hemsworth has his shirt off. Yeah. Or as Matthew McConaughey used to have it with his shirt off all the time.
He used to do the whole, didn't he?
Yeah.
I don't think it's quite that. I don't think I remember him in a state of undress in this.
All right. Okay. He's branching out. Cool. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So with all that,
possibly no, I don't think there was.
So with all that, what would you say about it? Like, how many stars would you give it?
I would certainly say it was certainly entertaining. So I would go with a respectful 3. I think it was good. It was entertaining. It's worth a watch. It's good to see some of the actors we know in some other roles, sort of subverting that a little bit, because some people who've always been like the good, wholesome, all American, suddenly a little bit nasty in this, which is quite nice to see.
Ooh.
So there's a few, it's not as predictable as you'd think. And the twists and turns in it are very, very good. Some of them improbable, but still entertaining. So I'd say, it was completely entertaining. But I couldn't say it was elevated into an art form or anything to make it more than that. So I would say it's nothing. It was a good, healthy, respectable 3.
But I think that's what I don't. Because what I don't think that you want any more than that for an action film. For an action movie, you're like, a 3. Good, you've done it. Now
you've done it. Yeah.
I'll put you. I'll watch you kill a whole bunch of people. I'll not think about it, and then move on to the next thing. All right, cool. Exactly. So, and now we get on to the big one. Well, this is the one that I really want to see what it is that you think about. So this is Steven Spielberg doing West Side Story, and in any other week, and this tells you the nature of the film world now. If it hadn't been for a Marvel movie, this would be the number 1 movie we'd be talking about this week. But Marvel have gone so big that even Steven Spielberg, please sit down there, take a back seat, and while we talk about this other film, until you direct a Marvel movie, which I cannot imagine ever happening. Yes, West Side Story. Sharon, tell us.
West Side Story. Yes, it's the latest. Well, it has been the latest. We've only had one before, but it is a latest sort of stage to screen adaptation of a Broadway musical.
Yes.
So I suppose it's in their tradition of stage to screen musicals that have been around for 70 years that we've seen come to the screen. And so this is, I think, only slightly different in the fact that it's been made into a film before. Most times when people adapt a stage musical to the cinema, it's for the first time. Whereas you don't
that
often
is
get
true.
one where they redo them.
Yeah, you don't
Unless
get
you've got
very
something
many
like
musical
Star is Born.
remakes. Yeah.
But I don't think A Star is Born was a stage musical. I think it was just it's a new story each time. It's remade for its own generation,
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
different. But I'm trying to think of any other musicals that have just been completely redone.
I honestly cannot think of any.
I can't think of anything.
Yeah,
No. So maybe it's a start of a trend that they may go, actually, let's go relook at Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, or take something that might have been problematical and say, let's have a look at that.
It would take a brave person to go to Seven Brides for Seven Brothers.
In the modern age, can you imagine?
I'm trying to. I mean, I for curiosity's sake, I actually really want to see that. I really want to see somebody try and do a modern take of Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. But
let's kidnap all these women.
But generally, just leave it. Even if you gender swapped it, it's still problematic.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Sorry.
That may not happen. So yeah, this West Side Story. So we know the story based on Romeo and Juliet, but introduced. They've kept the setting as in like the 1950s in New York, and they've broadened it out a little bit. So instead of just like sort of rambling around like the streets, they set it particular into this one area where they were doing things called slum clearances, where sort of mid-century. It happened in London, it happened in lots of cities. Well, in London because of the bombing after the war, but in New York, because basically they cleared a lot of the old tenements, the old slum areas, to build shiny new high-rise buildings.
Essentially gentrification.
Yes. Yeah. So it had the good things about it, and because it was supposed to improve the standards of living for the people who live there. Yeah. But what it turned into most often was just like slums higher up. You just ended up with high-rise slums as opposed to sprawling across a large acreage, which is what happened in other places like London. Anyway, aside from all that, so it's set squarely in this time frame of like the slum clearances, and there's this tension between second-generation immigrants, i.e. they're Irish, they're Italian, they're Jewish, but are mainly from like a white European background, Polish.
Yep.
So they're second generation immigrants, and then you've suddenly got these first generation immigrants who are people who are coming from Latin America, from principally in this film it's Puerto Rico, but it also includes people like from Cuba, from other sort of that Latin American world. And so these tensions have developed between this sort of second generation immigrants and this sort of the newcomers.
Yeah.
And as happens in all these situations, it's like the people who've been there a little bit longer are like, hey, you can't come in and muscle into our turf.
All these foreigners coming over and taking our jobs.
Exactly. Whereas like the generation before, it's like their fathers were the ones going, oi, you can't bully us because we're newcomers. You were Dutch people. You were the one. Yeah, so it's like a generation. It's just passed down through the generations.
Yeah.
But so into this world, we then have the two gangs, and each generation again forms its own gang. Like the Irish have given way to the Italians, have given way to these sort of like, you know, second generation white European from different ethnic mixtures who form the Jets, who are a gang, and they're up against principally this Latin American group of people, mainly Puerto Ricans, called the Sharks. And then the story progresses that you have a member of the Jets who has tried to leave the gang life because of sort of incidents in the past, Tony. He then meets the sister of the leader of the Sharks, Bernardo, Maria, and this meeting of these two young people then triggers a new wave of violence amongst this gang, and that's all set to music. So people know the story, and so. You know the story, so the music will be familiar with everyone, like When You're a Jet, I Feel Pretty, you know, Somewhere, America.
Tonight, it's in the air tonight.
Maria, I just want to go on it, Maria. So you've got we know all the music. And so it does tell that story, though I found it was interesting to do a compare and contrast, because I know I am very familiar with the musical and the film before, and so it's interesting to know how some of the songs are in a different sequence, so putting them in a different place in the film gives them a slightly different feel, and how they've tried to make it much grittier, how you can see that this sort of like the real enemy to both of these sets of people is poverty. and how poverty can lead to a lack of aspiration. For someone who's like second or third generation, unemployed, low income, no aspiration, that's just as demeaning as those people who work 30, 40 hours a week for a minimum wage job, and they're still stuck in the same cycle of poverty. So you've got one hand, they're saying that why should we do those jobs for no benefit? And then it's like, we are working as hard as we possibly can to better ourselves to no real benefit. You're still working 30, 40 hours a job in the jobs that no one else wants to do. So you've got the biggest enemies like poverty. And so these gangs have more in common than they have that separates them, but they just can't see it. And it's sort of through these tragic events that you begin to say, actually, we have more in common than we have that divides us. So it's with all these musicals, they have big themes, big emotions, big ideas, put to music.
Yeah, but so it seems like with this version of West Side Story, because obviously I think with any review of this film, it's going to be hard to take this film on its own merit. It's mostly going to devolve into a compare and contrast with the already well-known, multi-Oscar winning version of the film that has already been made. Yeah. So it's so with that, would you say that with this one they've upped the social commentary a bit more? Yeah. Okay, so I would say so. I don't think it's done in such an obvious way, but for someone who knows the original film, again, I compare and contrast, it's, some of the songs, like for comic effect, like Geoff's Krupke, for example, it's all for comic effect. And in this film, it has much more of a social commentary to it because of the way it's set, the way it's delivered, the circumstances around the way the song is done. It's not just a piece of comic like light relief in the film. It actually is it is actually quite a sad. Well, when you think about the words of Officer Krupke, it is quite sad.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's, and before, I think in the first film it is really just a comic relief, a light moment in the drama. Whereas in this, it's actually, you listen to words, you think that is actually.
Yeah, it's like, we're no good, we're just no good.
We're just no earthly good. Yeah.
So obviously, you know the two of them, and whenever we have a remake, I mean, there's some of us, like for instance with me, I'm the kind of person who loves the Blues Brothers, never saw the Blues Brothers 2000 because it was sacrilege to even think about doing that. And if anybody ever tries to remake the Blues Brothers, I'm going to be like, you sacrilege, burn it.
Away from that, yeah,
burn it with fire. So how about you? So original, you're a big fan. With this one, how'd you look at them? What's your feeling?
To me, it doesn't quite have punch up to the weight of the original, because there's something about the way those films are made, the saturation of the colour. Even though I did always have issues with Natalie Wood, she was never, because she obviously does mime her songs, and obviously she's made up to look more Latin American than her actual.
When she isn't, yeah.
And so some of them, you think, there are certainly issues with that. And the fact that, some of the actors in the first film don't actually sing the songs, whereas I believe in this one, they all have sung their own parts in the song.
Yes.
I mean, that's a big plus. And the fact that, yes, everyone, they're made up to look, different to what they are ethnically, is obviously something that makes less uncomfortable viewing, shall we say?
Yes.
Because it can stray into caricature, even though they just may give someone like a dye their hair black.
Yeah.
Even so, you can find yourself straying into caricature by doing that, which is not what the film is supposed to be about.
Yeah.
You can't just say, "Hey, we're all the same," when actually you've made.
We're all the same, but all of you people who actually are from that place, you're not allowed to be in the film.
Yeah. So we're not going to have anyone actually from that ethnic background showing equality and like, hey, we can all love each other because it doesn't matter. And then, but actually, we can't possibly have.
It's like we're all the same. We can all hang out and be fine with each other because we're all white. But
we're just made up to look like we're not. So there certainly are issues. I can see why people would be uncomfortable with some of those racial depictions now, because you think, why would you not cast someone who of the it's not as if you don't have access. It's not as if there's no people falling over themselves with talents to do that. But okay, but okay, so
That I agree with, and obviously thank you very much for saying that, Sharon, because then I didn't have to.
Yeah.
But when we talk about like the staging, we talk about the spectacle and all that, because that's what, because I do think that there is a problem, and I think you raised that there is a problem with making a musical nowadays, because so much of what you think of when you think of a movie musical was determined in the 50s, and the colors and the saturation and the way the shots look and the fact that you can suspend your disbelief when people start singing, it's all set then. And so when you try and do modern musicals, there's something, when it looks like real, when it looks like it would do in our world, there's something that just sort of like goes, I don't see people walking down the road singing with coordinated, choreographed dance numbers with music piping in from nowhere. There's something in there that's there's a dissonance.
Just go. But I think they walk that fine line quite well in this. There's a scene I think they're probably the biggest dance number, as it were, is America.
That'll be America, yeah.
Because in the first film, I just read the film. It's also on the rooftops, and it's a bit like but it's literally very confined. It's like on a rooftop, so it's confined. This is like full on. We're going out into the streets, and then you can't. But then the fact that you're sort of dancing and you're skipping about and you're doing your old sort of mambo moves and things, or samba moves. I'm not quite sure which. I'm not very good at my Latin dances. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then the people who are in the streets turn and look, because in most musicals it's like, unless you're actually part of the dance number, you are deaf and blind to what's going on.
Yeah, this is just what happens every day. This is just Tuesday.
Whereas this, everyone's going, they're all dancing and singing. And so you do get crowd gathers. So I thought that was quite a nice touch to recognise the fact that these are people who are dancing and skipping about in the street.
Yes.
And people who are just going about their business and suddenly going, there's singing and dancing going on. But yes, it's done. I thought it's done very well.
All
the
right,
musical
cool.
was done very well.
So, how many stars would you give this one?
I would give it a 4.
Ooh.
I would say it's entertaining. I would go and see it. I enjoyed it. I went with a friend, and she said, she felt a little bit droopy at the beginning. She was a bit like, I'm not sure. I'm up for, because it's a long film. It's nearly 3 hours long, I think, all told. Yeah. And so she was a bit like, but she said, I did pick up though, and once I got into it, it was fine. Because as soon as I started, I was like, right, come on, bring it on. I'm ready for this. Spectacular.
Good stuff.
I liked it, Paul.
I like that. So I'm keen to see this. I want to see what Steven Spielberg does with a musical, because he hasn't done one before. And I hope, because, all right, so obviously what we do, we started doing this whole thing where we put our individual movie reviews up on YouTube. So you can go into our YouTube channel, Netflix Cinema Podcast, and you can actually see the individual reviews of each one of the films that we review. And we had somebody, or in your review of Riders of Justice last week, we had somebody who watched it. Essentially, people seem to really like your reviews, Sharon, because your review of the Bonfire of Destinies has now gone over 1,000 views.
Oh wow!
on YouTube. Yep. And somebody came onto your review of Riders of Justice last week to pretty much tell me off for doing things. There's a comment on there going, why are you walking around and like playing with your wires and like, fiddling with that box in front of your face while you're doing this thing? You shouldn't do that, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just going to take that. I just said, thank you for your interest and for listening and for watching, because I'm gonna take that to mean that they loved your review so much that they got annoyed about the fact that I did not appear to be listening. So I apologize, Sharon. I apologize.
Oh, well, I accept your apology, and I probably didn't.
Yeah, tell them.
Thinking about that, it was just in my head. I obviously didn't.
Yes, I knew I was only. I knew I wasn't even needed. Just had to leave Sharon and Mads. They don't have to be in the same room. in that box. In the Zoom box, leave Sharon and Mads alone together. All right, cool. And now we go to the final thing that we're going to talk about. And this is a Netflix documentary series, because I have started getting into Netflix documentary series, or documentaries full stop, because Netflix do some really good ones. And I think they've been putting money behind them because they seem to get a lot of attention, and they cost a lot less than actually making the film. So this one is called Bad Sport. And the whole idea behind it is that each episode of it focuses on a time when you had a scandal in sports. It could have been financial, it could have been something else. And for instance, they talk about the Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City when there was a figure skating scandal between Russia and the US. Was it USA or Canada? I think it was USA, where they had the scandal between them as to how there was a judging scandal, and it came out, and it was kind of like, oh, hang on, how did they get the gold medal? They couldn't get the gold medal because and there's a bit of that. There's a bit about Hansi Cronje, who was the South African cricket captain who got done for match fixing. There's a bit about a racing driver who started his own team, and he was like a really, really good racing driver, and everybody was wondering where did this team come from, and then they found out that the entire team was bankrolled by weed money, because this guy was a massive weed smuggler who,
oh my goodness,
who pretty much started smuggling weed so he could pay for a racing team.
Money laundering.
Yeah, pretty much. It was kind of like, hang on a second, sorry. So it's essentially, and you can see that the guy, and so it's really interesting because it comes into the sort of intersection between where sports meets something bad, because the whole idea behind that, I mean, even now it's in the public eye, because I'm not sure, you might have heard stuff about F1 and about the F1 deciding, which I was watching that live, and I still can't really talk about it at the moment. It's for me, I look at that.
Raw.
I look at that and I go, that was a miscarriage of justice. That was essentially, it's made me feel like that sport is a joke. Like the integrity of that sport, of F1 as a sport, for me is kind of in tatters at the moment, in my personal view. So much so that I'm not thinking about watching it. And this TV show essentially looks at all those sort of moments where something has happened in the sport that essentially calls the integrity of the sport into question. That makes you go, what actually went on here? Sport's supposed to be this ideal. It's supposed to be this thing that we strive for. It's supposed to be the purest form of who we are as humans. You have them, and you win and you lose on merit, and all that. And this documentary series looks at what happens. I mean, I think the title, Bad Sport, is quiet Netflix. What is going on? What is going on? So I think at the title. Sorry, stop playing the title. Yeah, I think the title of Bad Sport, obviously, because that's like a saying when you say, bad sport, he was a bad sport. But also the fact that it just looks at when you have this thing that's supposed to be pure, and then it gets corrupted by something else. Almost kind of like, there's a bit of a way it looks at, almost like looking at the human psyche, and what about us, makes us crave for something that's so pure and unadulterated, and what about us cannot let that pure and unadulterated thing just stay and destroy it. So looking through the title, looking through the names of the Hoop Schemes, that's one about college basketball in the States, which is really, really big business, but none of the players get anything. So players at universities in America are not allowed to earn any money from playing basketball, but everybody else involved, the coaches, the TV show, make loads of money from college basketball, but the players, there's a rule where the players are not allowed to get paid. They get a scholarship to go to the university, fine, but day to day they don't get paid. And there was a really, really interesting thing about a guy who was a great player, it looks like he was set for the NBA, but came from a poor background, and what that whole thing about not being paid did and drove him towards. Need for Weed, I've already spoken about. Football Gate, there's the one that's about, it was called, I think, a Calciopoli scandal in Italy, where they had match fixing of certain big clubs saying who they wanted the referees to be, and it goes into it. That's almost like a mafia story. I mean, sorry to use the lazy thing of mafia because it's Italy and all that, but it's kind of framed almost like we're going into this investigation to try and bring down the mafia. Gold War, it was Canada. That's between Russia and Canada in the ice figure skating pairs. The gold medal. What happened there? Oh, there's an episode just called Horse Hitman.
Horse Hitman.
Yeah, Horse Hitman.
That racing.
Like racing horses, and it's all about somebody who was a horse hitman for insurance. It's horrid. it is horrid, but some of these things it's eye opening for the sports that it talks about. There's things about this sport that if you're not into that sport, you'll be like, hang on a second, I didn't know that. Wow.
No.
And then you realize, and then when you start going into what actually drives people to do these things, and
when you start looking at how vast sums of money gets bet on these things, I suppose that introduces a different element, doesn't it? Because it's not just about two equally matched competitors battling it out for honour.
Yeah.
When you start saying, okay, that we don't want to leave to chance what had cost me millions upon millions of dollars or millions of pounds.
Yeah.
So as soon as you get that element of let's reduce the risk of losing our money, you then start getting the element of corruption, don't you?
Yeah, yes, you did. But I thought this was a brilliant series. It was a brilliant series. There's only like 6 episodes that have been made so far. I'm pretty sure they're going to do a second series. And it just makes you go, wow, oh, ooh, wow. And some of the things that are revealed in it, I think, are some of them are heartbreaking. Some of the human interest stories are just affecting, and some of the scale of some of the corruption is just like, wow. So all in all, I would give Bad Sport a ooh. You see, now this is a personal thing where personally I think I would give it a 5.
Wow. Well, if it holds your attention and it's done in such a way.
And there's nothing about it, and there's nothing about this series that the way they tell the story, because I watched another documentary and I had so many notes that I would have written to the makers of the going, guys, could you do that? Could you change that? Could you do that? This isn't really clear. But I mean, this holds you, takes you all the way through it, and it spells it out very clearly why the sport was such a big deal and why what happened to murky the sport was such a big deal as well. Yeah, and so I think I'm gonna have to give it a 5. I think I'm gonna have to give Bad Sport a 5. I was thinking for other people it would be a 4, but I'm thinking it's supposed to be my own personal thing, and I think it's a 5. Yeah, Bad Sport's a 5. All right, cool. So all that's left to say is, what do we think, or who do we think has won this week, Sharon?
Well, I think we're based on that 5. Oh, I think it's a draw. I think it's a tie.
It's a tie. I wasn't actually expecting that until I started talking about Bad Sports. I was expecting that cinema has given such a good, steady 4-star week that I was like, yeah, cinema's got this one. Then I was like, well, no, Bad Sport is really good. Bad Sport is really good. So yes, that's it. It's a tie. So the real winners are us. Us, yay. The viewers. Yay for everybody. Everybody gets a present. So yep, so that's it. And now I think this might be our final Netflix for the cinema of the year.
Yes,
I think it might be, yeah, because let's see, next week is Christmas, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 23rd next Thursday.
Yeah, 23rd next Thursday.
But
so
life gets busy before Christmas, so
life gets okay. We might have another one. We'll see. Sharon and I will have to have a chat. Oh my God, Sean's going to do Christmas in Thailand.
Yeah, because he's not coming back, is he?
Yeah, he's going to do
when
Christmas
he thought
in Thailand.
He was.
Oh well, I want to see Sean in a beach with a Christmas hat on. But anyway, if that happens. Riding an elephant in a Christmas hat on a beach in Thailand on Christmas Day. If that happens, we will let you know. We'll put pictures up. Until next week when we'll figure out what we're going to watch, even though if we follow the usual things, there's been a Marvel movie that's been released, so that's nothing for the next 2 weeks. So nothing until the new year.
There's a few in the tweeny days between. It's like The King's Man, isn't there, coming out?
Oh yeah, that's true.
What else is there? There's something else coming out. I thought,
let's have a look.
Ooh.
Let's have a look.
But it was something.
Yeah, there will be something. Let's have a look. So, in my local cinema that only does the big things, as you know from hearing me complain and whinge about it. So yeah, Spider-Man's everywhere. There's Clifford, the big red dog.
Yeah, there is.
I love that. Yes, that is a thing. So Sharon, they're showing Home Alone and Home Alone 2, and The Nightmare Before Christmas. But the fact that there isn't really anything new means that we might have the Marvel effect. We might have the. But anyway, until next week, where we might watch something and bring it back to you. If not, Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. It's a goodbye from me,
and it's a goodbye from me.
We will see you guys later. Bye.